There are at least 3 ways to build most EDH decks. Strong, fun, and mean. Let's talk about the strong, fun, and mean ways that I would build Neyith of the Dire Hunt, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I am Joel. We're going to talk about Neyith of the Dire Hunt in EDH today and the 3 ways that I would build her. But first, if you liked the video by the end of it and you want to see more videos like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down there, all the YouTube stuff. And if there's a commander that you want me to build 3 ways, leave that in the comments as well. Let's talk about this commander. Neyith of the Dire Hunt is a 2 green, 2 other, 3/3 legendary human warrior that says whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 and either a red or a green. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. This is one of the better Gruul commanders I've seen in a long time. In general, when you take a commander that has an ability and then you tack on the words draw a card, people are going to be able to figure that out, and it's going to be a very strong commander. Particularly in green and red, keeping your hand full through an aggressive strategy can be kind of a challenge. You want to make sure that you have enough resources so that you can keep deploying them even after board wipes or death or anything like that. Neyith of the Dire Hunt does a good job of that, allowing our creatures to give us cards back anytime they fight or become blocked. We can also double power to get even more going and force blocks, even though we can't force which creature they are particularly blocking just with this card alone. I really want to take advantage of the or becomes blocked to draw a card. I want them to get double negative results from blocking our creatures. We get to draw a card and something else happens. So we're going to go with a Deathtouch / attacking strategy for our strong build. For our fun build, we're going to lean into the fact that there is a wolf, a dire hunt part of this card flavor-wise, and we're going to make wolves tribal for our fun build. And then for our mean build, we are going to go all in on Infect. Let's get into these strategies. For the Deathtouch strategy, we don't just want to play a bunch of little creatures that have Deathtouch. We want to play big, heavy-hitting creatures because we want it to be some kind of decision if they're going to block or not. If they do block, their creature dies and we net a card. And if they don't block, we need to get some significant damage across so that our Gruul strategy can eventually win by getting everybody's life total down to 0. Starting off with Ronus the Indomitable, it's a Death-touching indestructible 5/5, so it hits really hard, and it has Deathtouch. If they do block it, it obviously can't attack unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater, but in these Gruul colors, that's not going to be difficult to pull off. Plus, we can give another target creature +2/+0 and trample, so we can give Neyith our buff off of Ronus and make Ronus able to attack for 5, and that's not an insignificant amount of damage. Questing Beast, here's another one. 4 damage that gets across, it's got Vigi, it's got Deathtouch, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or greater, so we're going to get some good trade, hopefully, of at least a power 3 or greater creature. Combat damage obviously can't be prevented if Questing Beast is on the field, and when it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to a planeswalker that player controls. It just fits really well into this strategy. Having Deathtouch, having haste, having vigilance, plus all of the other text on it as well. If they do eventually decide to block it, which they're pretty incentivized to do, they lose their blocker and we net a card. That's really what we want to do with Neyith. Wormcoil Engine, here's just a classic. 6 cost for a 6/6 Death-touching lifelinker. When it dies, it splits into 2 3/3s, one with Deathtouch and one with lifelink. This is exactly what you want to be running. It takes out something with it, actually twice with the Death-touching token. It gets blocked and it dies, then you get to net a card, and it's killing stuff. It's a 6/6, so if they don't block it, a significant amount of damage is getting through. We can just keep punching in and keep getting some damage across. We can, however, go with some smaller Deathtouch creatures as well, because any little point of damage is going to help, especially with an attacking deck. Skullwinder is a 3-cost 1/3 with Deathtouch. When it enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, then choose an opponent and they get to do the same thing. Now, this is extra value on a already Death-touching, attacking ready creature. Skullwinder's great in this deck. We can get some of these creatures back. If they took out our Wormcoil Engine, if they took out our Questing Beast, bring that back, keep attacking through. We're just going to be doing damage, and we're going to be taking blockers with us while we net more cards to deploy more resources onto the battlefield with Neyith. Acidic Slime, here's another extra value death-touching creature. It's a classic, 2/2 for 5 cost, death-touching. When it enters the battlefield, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or land. Boom. Get something out of there. Oran Frostfang. Now, we don't always have to play death-touching creatures if we're giving our attacking creatures death touch, and there's 2 cards that'll allow us to do that. Oran Frostfang is 5 cost, 2/6. Attacking creatures you control have death touch. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This figures in the rest of the equation that Neyith doesn't provide us. Now, whether they block or not, we're going to be drawing cards with our creatures. Especially if we're incentivizing not blocking. Now we're incentivizing blocking. It's just damned if you do, damned if you don't for our opponents. I love Frostfang in this deck. I also love Bow of Nylea. Attacking creatures you control have death touch. Then we've got some versatility. We can pay 2 and tap the Bow to either put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, deal 2 damage to a creature with flying, or gain 3 life, or put 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order, so we don't deck ourselves, or we can go and search for something that's already dead with some kind of tutor. Bow offers a lot of value. If we're going in with attacking creatures type effects, let's go with Berserker's Onslaught as well. 5 cost for an enchantment that just gives all of our creatures double strike. A creature with death touch and first strike is so good. The death touch damage goes through first before the other creature, unless it has first strike or double strike, even gets to touch us. Already focusing on a death touching strategy and then giving everything first strike, and not just that, but double strike, Berserker's Onslaught has a home in this deck for sure. Gruul Warchant. Let's make them so that they have to block our death touch creatures with 2 creatures, so we can assign damage and get 2 kills and a card before our death touch creature dies. Gruul Warchant, 4 cost enchantment, attacking creatures you control get +1/+0, which is fine, and Menace, which is what we're looking for. That's what we want to do. We can assign death touch creatures, we can assign death touch damage to 2 different creatures. Combustible Gear Hulk. Here's a first striker. Okay, this is another way to incentivize not blocking. If we can take out their blocker before our thing even dies, then we're going to still net the card from the block and our thing's going to survive. Gear Hulk says when it enters the battlefield, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards, so we could get more value off of this. But if they don't, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then it deals damage to that player equal to the CMC of those cards. So we've de-incentivized blocking, which is what we really want to do. We want damage to go through, even though blocking does get us a card back. And we're playing a creature that gives us the residual value of more damage on our opponents. Fiendish Duo. Here's another one. 6 cost for a 5/5, but it's got first strike, so it's fairly difficult to block. And if a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage to that player instead. You can play this, even though it doesn't have haste, and swing with your line, and you're doing double damage. If you've got something out that gives a menace, something like that, that's going to really de-incentivize blocking, Fiendish Duo could be the game winner drop for you right as you're about to push with a huge attack. So there's one part of Neyith's ability that you can see over there that we haven't really taken advantage of, and that's whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked. So let's play things like Ravager Worm. It's a great creature, it's very versatile. It's a 6 cost 4/5 with Riot. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1. Fights a target creature you don't control, so we get to possibly kill something and draw a card, or we can destroy target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. So we can take out somebody's pesky non-basic land, or we can fight something and draw a card with Ravager Worm. Apex Altasar, 10/10 for 7/8/9 cost. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and when it's dealt damage, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So it just runs and runs and runs and runs until there's nothing to fight. It dies, but it deals 10 damage as long as you do the math correctly. So fight a 1/1, it deals 10 damage and takes 1, it's at 9, and so forth. Then fight a 2/2, it deals 10 damage, it takes 2, it's got 7 toughness left. This is how you want to use Apex Altasar, and you get to draw cards for each fight that happens. In our deck, essentially, Apex Altasar says fight things until Apex Altasar is dead, draw as many cards as fights happened. So good, so good in this deck. And then you've got Foe Razor Regent. Foe Razor Regent is a flying 4/5 for 7, and when it enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control, and whenever a creature you control fights, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step, so that it can fight even more later on. So some big fight creatures are going to have a lot of synergy with our commander as well. Kagla the Titan Ape, I think, represents so much on one card with this human warrior commander that I have to think that maybe they were developed in the same room as each other. It's kind of ridiculous. Let's go through it. 6 cost for a 7/6. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to one target creature you don't control. So we get a fight trigger right off the ETB. Then, whenever it attacks, destroy an artifact or enchantment defending player controls, incentivizing blocking as much as possible and just killing Kogla, or Kogla is going to kill all of your artifacts and enchantments. Then on top of that, we can pay 2 to return target human you control to its owner's hand and give our ape indestructible until end of turn. So we can pay 2, put Neyith back into our hand to avoid some kind of removal, and you can do this at instant speed. There's nothing that says you can't on Kogla, and give our ape indestructible so that it can't die due to a huge block, say. A multi-block is not going to kill Kogla if we've got a human on the battlefield, our commander, that you can return to the hand and give the Titan Ape indestructible. I think that's a really strong way to build this commander. Let's jump over into the fun way and really lean heavily into the wolves theme. It's weird starting off a wolf tribal section with an elf warrior, but Wren's Run Packmaster is a 4-cost 5/5. Champions an elf, you have to sacrifice unless you remove another elf you control into play, so you're going to need some elves in the deck to be able to play this card. But for 3 mana, you can put a 2/2 wolf creature token into play, and it gives each wolf you control Deathtouch. This is huge. It's like it combines the two thoughts that I was thinking of with strong and with fun. Now, granted, you do need to play a certain amount of elves in this deck so that Wren's Run Packmaster can be played, but if you look to elves for your mana ramp, some of your return from the graveyard stuff, it's not that difficult to do. Then you've just got an unlimited amount of death-touching wolves coming out, only limited by the amount of mana you've got. Let's look at some actual wolves. Silver Fur Partisan is a 3-cost 2/2 with trample that says whenever a wolf or a werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery, create a 2/2 wolf creature token. We're going to go wide with this strategy with a lot of these cards. Anytime any of our wolves or werewolves get targeted, boom, we get another 2/2 wolf. It incentivizes them getting Silver Fur out of the game first. Arlen, Voice of the Pack, is a 6-cost walker with 7 loyalty. Each creature you control that's a wolf or a werewolf enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can -2 to create a 2/2, a 3/3 wolf creature token. Arlen's great. We can just pump out a bunch of wolves until Arlen's out of loyalty and is just sitting there, but also giving us the residual value of having our wolves and werewolves come into the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. This is the flip of Arlen, okay? So Arlen, Embraced by the Moon. This is Arlen Cord. We've got 4 mana for a 3 loyalty walker, +1 until in a turn a target creature gets +2/+2 and gains Vigi and Haste. So any of our big creatures, maybe like Kogla, can gain haste right off the rip. Plus, we can create 2/2 wolves and then transform Arlen. Arlen transforms into an Anthem ability, +1/+1. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. A -1 for her to deal 3 damage to a creature or player and then transform Arlen back to create more tokens. Or the -6, which is an eventuality. You get an emblem with creatures you control have haste, and they can tap to deal damage to its power to target creature or player. This is such a good emblem, so strong, and Arlen is a very good planeswalker for this deck. I love having that Anthem ability. If you've seen our generalized tribal EDH video, if you haven't seen it, you need to go check it out. It shows a lot of good strategies that can fit into any tribal deck, but with tribal in general, anthems are a huge part of it to grow your line tall as you're growing your line wide with the resources that you have in your deck. Ulrich Uncontested Alpha is the flip of Ulrich of the Krallen Horde. 5-cost 4/4. When it enters the battlefield or transforms, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn, which is pretty nice. And at the beginning of the upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform it. Ulrich transforms into... When it transforms, you may have it fight target non-werewolf creature you don't control, so we get a fight trigger, and at the beginning of each upkeep, it'll transform back. So it transforms into a 6/6 that can immediately fight, get us a card if Neyith's on the battlefield, and then if 2 more spells were cast, it gets transformed back and gives a creature +4/+4 until end of turn. Super thematic card, definitely a card I want to include in here. Ulrich's also got a Kindred Wolf, a 3/2 for 3 with trample that says 4 target attacking wolf or werewolf gains indestructible until end of turn, so you can protect your tribe. I really like abilities like this that are going to keep our big wolves alive through multi-blocks so that we get to draw the cards and keep our creature on the battlefield. Howlpack Resurgence is an anthem that is specific to the wolf tribe. It's got flash, which is nice. You can play this at instant speed and surprise somebody with it, but it's a 3-cost enchantment that gives all your wolves and werewolves +1/+1 and trample. Anthems are always good. Here's another anthem that is great, and it's on a wolf that can create wolves. Nightpack Ambusher. 4 for a 4/4 with flash. Again, other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1, and if you're at the point where you're not casting spells because you want to just regrow your resources in your hand and your line is strong enough, you create a 2/2 wolf. You get a little rewarded for not doing anything. If you've got a lot of flash, you've got some instant speed stuff, you can cast Nightpack Ambusher on their turn, at the end of their turn, to start creating some wolves as residual value. Also, you get that Anthem ability, which is definitely nothing to shake a stick at. Wolf is a card that definitely needs to go in here, and it's not a card that I had seen before. I'm really excited to find this one and share it. 3 costs for a 2/2 with Intimidate, which means that the creatures blocking it have to share a color or be artifact creatures. We've got the Anthem. Other wolf and werewolf creatures you control get +1/+1. It does say, however, that non-human werewolves you control can't transform. So if we do flip any of our creatures into werewolves, they stay their werewolf effect and they can't transform back. Can be good, can be bad, but the Anthem on here is really what we're going for. It's a really cheap way to get a wide growth on all of our creatures. Full Moon's Rise is another anthem for wolves specifically. 2 for an enchantment. Werewolf creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample, plus you can sack it to regenerate all werewolf creatures you control. It is specific to werewolves. It's not for wolves in general, but if we're building enough werewolves into this deck, this is a card that you could definitely include. Speaking of werewolves, here's the flip of a card called Mayor of Avabrook. It's a 2-cost 1/1. Other humans you control get +1/+1, so we get an anthem on the first side of it. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, we transform it, and it transforms into an anthem for wolves and werewolves, all getting +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, you automatically put a 2/2 wolf creature token onto the battlefield, and then it transforms if 2 or more spells were cast last turn. I really like how we've got an anthem on both sides of this card. Humans, our Neyith grows from this side of it, and then our wolves grow from the flip of it. Wolfbriar Elemental is not a wolf, but it's an elemental that creates them. 4 for a 4/4, and it's got multi-kicker. So you want to play this one late because you want to pump as much green mana into this as you can, because for every green mana that you pump into it, we get a 2/2 wolf. Okay, so we just get to go crazy wide. This is a great way to rebuild after a Wrath of God or something, so that we can get our line back going, cast an anthem, and get back to attacking. Wolfcaller's Howl. Here's another way to regrow your lines after wipes. 4 mana for an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Put X 2/2 wolves onto the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents with 4 or more cards in hand. So we could be netting max of 3 in a real game of Commander wolves every single turn just by having opponents with 4 or more cards in hand, which, as we know with Commander, is the case very, very often. So those are the wolf cards that I would run in the fun wolf tribal strategy. Like I said, check out our generic top cards for tribal EDH video. It's got a lot of cards that would also fit very well into this deck, but can also fit into almost any tribal strategy. Before we move on, though, I want to show you what I think are the 2 coolest wolf tokens that you can get in multiples for this deck. I love this one, the pointy ears. It looks like a nightmare wolf, and this other one, it is a full art treatment. It's this pack alpha wolf standing there on top of a hill. She's beautiful. She's got this steely gaze, and she is ready to take you out. All right, so we've talked about strong, we've talked about fun. Let's talk about mean and make Neyith of the Dire Hunt an Infect Commander. Here we go. Infect strategy is pretty straightforward. It's just a really mean way to go. You want, just like the Deathtouch, you want heavy hitters that are going to do a lot of damage and really de-incentivize blocking, because if they do block and they keep the infect counters off of themselves, we get to draw cards, which is also a very good thing, because that means we get to keep getting our infect creatures from our library into our hands so that we can deploy those resources and attack for the win. Blightsteel Colossus, Big Daddy OG of the infect, trample infect indestructible. If it gets put into the graveyard, it gets reshuffled into the library. This is a big baddie. You want to ramp up, you want want to play Colossus, you want to go to town. You can also go very small. Inkmoth Nexus, make it a 1/1 flying with Infect, swing over, ping them out, just kind of keep Infect counters constantly going on to our opponents. 5 cost 7/7 for Phyrexian Hydra. It's got Infect, and if damage would be dealt to it, we prevent it. We would put -1/-1 counters on it for damage that was prevented, but it swings for 7 that first time it swings, and it's got Infect. If they want to block, fine, but if they don't, they're going to take Infect, and if they do, we draw a card. That's the beautiful part of Neyith of the Dire Hunt. Phyrexian Swarmlord, here's another one. 6 cost, 4/4 Infect. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 insect creature token with Infect onto the battlefield for each poison counter your opponents already have. This is actually one that you don't want to be swinging with because you're going to get residual value from every Infect counter that's already out there. We get to create 1/1s with Infect. If they block those, we draw a card. If they don't, we get Infect on them. That's one of my favorite parts of Neyith. It doesn't say whenever one or more non-token creatures you control become blocked or fight, draw a card. It's any creature. It can be tokens. Swarmlord is fantastic in this strategy. Putrefax is a way to win. It's got haste, it's got trample, it's got Infect. It only lasts the 1 turn, but it's 5 Infect. It's halfway there on an Infect count on an opponent, unless they block it, in which case we get to replace it before we even sacrifice it. Really like having big punches in our Infect strategy, but we can also go smaller. Core Prowler's a 2/2 for 4. It's got Infect, which is nice for when it attacks, but when it dies, we get to proliferate. So everybody that's already got an Infect counter is going to go up an Infect counter just from this thing dying. So we get value off of it being blocked and being killed. Ferromancer is nice because it can attack with Infect. It is a 1/1 for 4, but you can pay 2 and tap it to deal a damage to a target creature or player. Now, because it's got Infect, that damage is going to be dealt as poison damage. So we can get a player the rest of the way there, say they're at 9, we get them to 10 with Fallen Ferromancer, they lose. Or we can reduce the power toughness of creatures around the battlefield because Infect is dealt to creatures as -1/-1 counters, and we can lower them. Lower that 5/5 to a 4/4 swing with our 5/5, we're good. We'll survive that block, you know. Phyrexian Juggernaut, here's another one. Real big punches is what you want. 5/5 for 6. Infect, it has to attack, but we want it to be attacking anyway because it's going to be just doing chunks of Infect damage until it's blocked and killed. And every time it's blocked, as you know, Neyith is going to provide us with more resources. We can also get some residual value. You know how much I love ETBs that synergize with the strategy that we're going for. 2/2 for 3 with an Infect Elf Shaman. We saw an elf earlier, remember, and we need elves. Boom, here's one. When it enters the battlefield, destroy an artifact. So ace the problematic artifact, get an Infect creature left behind. Then you can possibly champion it for Ren's Run Packmaster, be creating wolves. Bang, bang, boom. We got synergy going. It's fantastic. This is kind of a weird card that I really need to test more thoroughly, but I really think that it can be good in an Infect strategy. Enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it for 4 mana. You can pay 2 and tap it to put another charge counter on it, or you can pay 2, tap it, remove a charge counter from it to put a insect creature token with Infect onto the battlefield, thus growing your Infect line, putting more pressure on your opponents to block the Infect creatures that are coming through. When they do Infect, when they do block the creatures with Infect, we get a card back, and if they don't block, we get poison counters on our opponents to get them that much closer to dying, to ending the game because of poison counters. We've also got First Strikers. I told you the importance of First Strikers with Deathtouch. Same thing with this. First Strikers with Infect. The blocking creature takes a -1/-1 counters as the damage, and so 2 -1/-1 counters are put onto anything that blocks Razor Swine before their combat damage is even dealt back to it. Obviously, Razor Swine probably dies in the course of battle, but this is just another example of how you're trying to de-incentivize blocking even though we get resources when they block. Corpse Cur has Infect and it's a 2/2 for 4, but when it enters the battlefield, we can get that Putrefax back that we sacrificed earlier. We can return that from our graveyard to our hand. We can return Putrefax to the battlefield, attack again, keep doing chunks of Infect damage. Let me know how you're going to build Neyith of the Dire Hunt. It's a commander from Jumpstart, and they've really done a great job of making these 2-color commanders that have strategies that are very, very playable. Like I said, taking a good card and tacking draw a card onto it really anywhere is going to make it a good commander most times. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we would really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments if there's a commander you want me to build 3 ways. If you want to hang out with us, we stream here on YouTube and over on Twitch. Find us there. And if you want to support us further, we have a Patreon. The link is down in the description below. Monthly giveaways, early access to videos, behind the scenes videos, lots of cool stuff over there. Go check it out and see if you're a good fit. Other than that, I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you later.